Hello, this is Kellen again from Make, and today we're going to discuss error logging. So if you'll remember from previous lessons, when you're first building scenarios, it's very important to understand where errors are happening and where they're frequently occurring. With that information, you can go back into your scenarios and you can build error handling that suits that scenario based off of errors that have happened previously. So we're going to go through two different scenarios today. The first one is on the screen here. It's going to be using a mail hook for any error email or warning email that you receive from Make. So we'll be able to parse that email and create an error log within Google Sheets. The second one we'll go through afterwards, and this one is going to be using the Make API to be able to see where errors or warnings have happened and log them within a Google Sheet as well. So let's get to it. Looking at this scenario here, we have a few things going on. The first thing that I want to explain is the trigger. With Make, you can do a custom webhook, which you probably are very familiar with. So when you type in webhook, you can click on that and see the custom webhook. There's also the custom mailhook, and that is what we're using here today. You'll notice that it's also instant, so immediately once the mailhook receives a notification or an email, this scenario will trigger. In order to configure your inbox to forward emails to this mailhook, you can go into, and I'm going to show within Gmail, but you can do this within other mail providers as well. You can go into your Gmail, head into your settings, go to see all settings here, and there's this forwarding and pop IMAP. From here, you can add a forwarding address, and you can take the address that Make gives you here, and you can put it into the forwarding address over here. Hit next. Well, we've already had this in here. It will ask you to confirm, and then you can go through to the next step. From there, you'll have this forwarded email address here that will forward those emails. Now, this out of the box will forward all of your emails. So what you can do instead is create a filter. So when you click on this create a filter, you can put in any filtering criteria here, such as the from email or the subject line or words within the subject line. So we know with their emails, Make will send it from the no reply at we.make.com. So we can put that in there as the from. And then within the subject, there can be the words error, for example. Now, let's head back into the scenario and I'll explain a few other steps. So going back into the scenario here, I think it will help to first look at an email that comes through. So I'll go back into the logs here. And when we go into this last one that was processed, we can take a look at the email that we receive. So we can see that there in fact was the word error in the subject line. And now we should look into the text to see how the email comes through, because this is the part that we're going to want to parse. So if you'll notice down in the middle of the email, this is where all of the information is that we need. So we have the delimiter here as a colon, and that will separate the key and value pairs. So we have the scenario, colon, digital transformation event. Your organization, colon, Kellen's organization. And you'll notice in the beginning here, we do have asterisks as well, which we want to get rid of. So on this next step here, what we're doing is we're using the function replace. We're mapping in the text. We're replacing those asterisks with an empty string just to get rid of them. From there, what that does is it's going to match, because we use the delimiter, the colon, it's going to match all of those key value pairs together. So it returns 28 bundles. Some of them we don't need, but you will notice that we have the match organization and Kellen's organization, for example, as a key value pair. The next part here is going to be using the array aggregator to take those key value pairs and create an array with them so that you can easily identify those keys and values. So if we go back into the diagram here, when we go into the array aggregator, all we need to do is select the source module to this text parser, and then from here just do key and value and hit OK. The next module here is just taking that array and creating a collection out of it. So we use the toCollection function, map in the array, and do key value is the raw values. It brings in pretty much all of the key value pairs that we were looking for within the email. So you'll notice now we have key value pairs, the scenario and the scenario name, the organization and the organization name, and so on. So now the only thing left to do is to get the logs link within the email. So we use the text parser get elements from HTML, and we map in the HTML content within the email, and we're looking for the element type A. From here, this is going to return all of the different links within the email. And if you open up some of the attributes, we'll notice that we have links to the logs, which is what we want. So the last step here is we're just setting up a filter that says that the link that we find, the href, has to contain logs in order for it to pass through. Then if we look into what we're passing into the Google Sheet, you'll notice that a combination of the set variable toCollection that we have and also the href that we grabbed from the HTML. There's some other things here too that we're doing to clean up the data a little bit, like we are splitting the team by a bracket, and we're getting the first one just to get the team name in plain text. And then we're doing some formatting to the date that the error occurred today. So that's how the scenario is set up. Now we will push through an error to see this work in real time. So this is our error logging sheet. And then if I go to this other screen, these are the scenarios that will produce the error. So this scenario here is going to actually receive the error, starts by a webhook, and this HTTP module will call this webhook over here. This webhook will return a 400. And we have it in here where we're evaluating all states as errors except for 200 and 300. So when it calls this and gets a 400 response, it's going to error out. So if I go ahead and grab the webhook URL here and call it on another screen, we'll notice that instantly we got an error here. And if we come back to this error logging screen, we should see some errors coming through from the make emails. So we get the error message here that the scenario has been deactivated because of an error. From here, you can click in to view the logs, and it will take you directly into the scenario logs here, where you can drill into the details and see exactly where your scenario errored out and the error message here as well. Now, before we conclude the video, let's go into each module and quickly go through the configuration of each one. So again, we have it starting with the mail hook, which will trigger anytime you receive an email that meets those filters. The next step here is the match elements, which you will get in this text parser module here. When you go into the match elements, you have the ability to select all of these different patterns, and you'll select the key value pair. It does automatically populate the delimiter here. If there's a different one, you can always change that as well. But for this and for the make emails that you receive, it will be the colon. These settings are standard, don't have to mess with those. And I put in the replace function here as well, so that we can just replace any of those asterisks with an empty string. Probably not completely necessary, but it's a way to clean up the data there. The next step is the array aggregator. And if I open up the array aggregator here, we select the source module to the text parser here, and all we need is to select the key and value. And the reason why we do this is this match elements will return a bunch of bundles of information. And so we need to aggregate those into an array so that we can then, on the next module here,
convert those into a collection. So it's no longer an array, it's a collection that we can use all those key value pairs to map in one by one into your error logging. So that brings into the next step here for the set variable. And from here, we are just using the native function, which you can see within the working with arrays. You have the to collection. And so you can just map in the array, and then you do semicolon key, semicolon value, and it is the raw values for key and value that you can just type in here. Finally, we'll go into the get links from HTML. And again, this is in the parser here, and you'll see that from right here. And when you go into here, all you need to do is map in the HTML content that you receive from the mail hook, because that will have all of those HTML elements in there. And that concludes the parsing of the information in those modules. Then the last two that we have here is the adding in the errors. So this is just the two collection variables that we receive where we're able to map those in. And then doing some other functions here to clean up the data and mapping those in as well. The final one is just a text input, and you can select who you want to send this to. This is just an additional step for any sort of alerting that you would like to put into the scenario as well.
That concludes the error logging via the emails that you receive from Make and using the mail hook to process them. Now we'll dive into error logging using the Make API, and we'll dive into the differences between the two of them and when you would use one versus the other.